قناة فلذاتنا.
سبحانك ربي يا رحمن، يا من كرمت بني الإنسان، وجعلت الأسرة تجمعنا وتقينا من لفح الحرمان. إن قام الأب بتربية للروح وأيضا للأبدان، وزرع الخير بأبناء وأسس ذياك البنيان، فسيحصد من ذلك خيرا وسيهزم أجناد الشيطان، ويؤسس بيتا للتقوى ويؤيد من رب منان، ويعامل زوجا بالحسنى ويعمر بيتا بالإحسان.
قناة فلذاتنا.
ويحفظ للأخت محبة، فالأخت كأنفاس الريحان، ويشد بكف لأخيه كي يقفا في وجه الطوفان. أسرتنا يا نعمة ربي، يا وردا أزهر في البستان، يا قارب خير يحمينا إن عصفت أمواج الخلجان. إن عاشت أسرتنا بشرع سنكون معا في بر أمان، سنكون معا في بر أمان.
قناة فلذاتنا.
Net service. It will introduce the theory developed by Howard Gardner about multiple intelligences and discuss its implications in education. Howard Gardner started as a psychologist. During the 70s and 80s he developed the multiple intelligences theory. Recently he turned his focus to the impact of his theory on education. The main question asked by Gardner is whether the educational system is serving every child, or there are several paths to reach the same or equivalent level of knowledge and skill, and the educational system should find what path is more suited to each individual. We all experience that people have different kinds of skills. For instance, one may be good in math but have difficulties communicating with other people, while another may be just the opposite. Our skills influence the way we think, memorize and represent things in our minds, which means that they influence how we learn. Even if we know that people may have different strengths, traditional education and traditional tests have focused primarily on logical and linguistic skills. Teaching methods are designed to resonate with these skills, leaving people with different skills excluded. We should then ask whether education is reaching every child. And how can we change education so that every child get a better chance to learn?
Let's now dig into the different intelligences. Gardner introduces the concept by making an analogy with computers. Is the brain equivalent to one computer, so that we can compare two brains and see which one is more powerful, or is the brain like a network of computer with different functions, so that we need to create a much more complex picture when making a statement about intelligence? Gardner answers to this question by saying that we can identify 8 types of intelligence, each one important and to a certain extent independent from the others. Let's look at them. The spatial intelligence is the ability to conceptualize and manipulate large-scale spatial arrays and visual images, as for instance airplane pilots and sailors do, or more local forms of space, as in the example of architects and chess players. Engineers and scientists usually have a high level of spatial intelligence too, as they rely heavily on visual representations of concepts and relationships. People with high spatial intelligence should learn better when using visualizations, diagrams, mind maps and other graphical and visual representations of concepts. The bodily kinesthetic intelligence is the ability to use one's whole body, or parts of the body, to solve problems or create a product or performance. As for instance dancers, athletes, craftsmen, and actors. It usually includes sense of timing, a clear sense of the goal of a physical action, along with the ability to train responses. People who have high bodily kinesthetic intelligence should learn better when physical activities are involved, as for instance by getting up and moving around into the learning experience.
Musical intelligence has to do with sensitivity to sounds, rhythms, tones, and music. People with a high musical intelligence may be able to sing, play musical instruments, and compose music. Since there is a strong auditory component to this intelligence, those with a strong musical intelligence may learn best from lectures. People with high musical intelligence will sometimes use songs, rhythms and rhymes to learn and memorize things. The linguistic intelligence is manifested in sensitivity to the meaning of words, their order, sound, rhythms, and inflection, as for instance writers, poets and comedians. Given that much of our culture and education is based on language and books, the linguistic intelligence usually provide an advantage in many learning situations and in many areas. People with high linguistic intelligence will enjoy learning by reading, by listening to stories, and from situations involving humor.
The logical mathematical intelligence is the capacity to conceptualize the logical relations among actions or symbols. Typical examples are mathematicians and scientists. This area is also directly connected with logic, abstractions, reasoning, numbers and critical thinking. It also has to do with having the capacity to understand the underlying principles of some kind of causal system. People with high logical mathematical intelligence will benefit learning from structured material. As with the case of linguistic intelligence, the logical mathematical intelligence is at the center of much of our culture and educational tradition, so individuals possessing high level of this intelligence are advantaged and easily recognized. The interpersonal intelligence is concerned with the capacity to understand the intentions, motivations and desires of other people. It allows people to work effectively with others. Educators, salespeople, religious and political leaders and counselors all need a well-developed interpersonal intelligence. People with high interpersonal intelligence will benefit from an educational style including group work and cooperative learning activities. The intrapersonal intelligence area has to do with introspective and self-reflective capacities. This refers to having a deep understanding of oneself, own strengths and weaknesses, what makes one unique, and own emotions. It also helps predict own reactions to other people, problems, and stress, which makes interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence often connected, even if not necessarily so. People with high interpersonal intelligence will benefit from a self-paced and independent educational style.
The naturalistic intelligence has to do with nurturing and relating to one's natural surroundings. Examples include classifying natural forms such as animal, plant species, and rocks. This ability was clearly of value in our evolutionary past as hunters, gatherers, and farmers. It continues to be central in such roles as botanist, farmer, or chef. People with high naturalistic intelligence may benefit from a variety of educational strategies, including inquiry-based learning and direct instruction techniques taking advantage of the natural inclination to understand differences and categorize.
It is important to note that the intelligences, as defined here, are the intellectual tools at the disposal of each individual. It is up to each one of us to decide whether to put them at work for good or bad, however one may define good and bad. For instance, interpersonal intelligence could be used for helping others or to harm others. The theory of intelligences is independent from any particular set of moral values. The intelligences constitute the human intellectual toolkit. Unless grossly impaired, all human beings possess the capacity to develop all 8 intelligences. At any one moment, a human being will have a unique profile of intelligence, because of both genetic, social context and personal experience. The educational system should provide an adjusted strategy that takes advantage of one's strengths and help improving one's weaker sides.